It's great to see you all here. And what I'm going to do, I've got just a few slides that I'm going to talk through to get you, hopefully, to think about portfolios and the kind of advice students need, because it's the moment when they've handed in most of their other work, probably, and are running about asking for advice about portfolios. The way this works is that you get to hear this about 2 minutes after I say it, and what I'll do, I'll talk probably for about 20 minutes, and then I'll answer your questions. If you type questions in as you think about them, they'll all be sitting here for me ready to answer as soon as I've finished speaking. So don't hold back. Ask the questions and I'll do my best with them when they come. This is being recorded too, so and I'm happy for it to be shown to anybody. It is a public access document at the moment. People can log in who are nothing to do with social work or the BSc. So if it would be useful for you to show to students, then please do that, and anyone else who would be interested in it. What I'm going to do is talk briefly about the purpose of portfolios, focus particularly on giving advice, to look at some examples around how to make sure that what you're giving is support for students to approach this in depth, rather than kind of trying to guess where the hoops are and jump through them to our satisfaction. And then to spend a bit of time looking at the 3 different years and how they work together. So first of all then, what's the purpose of the portfolio? What's really important is that whilst the portfolios are an academically marked piece of work, that they are about the students learning over the year, and as it goes through the course, it's about their learning in all years. So what we're really after is a window on the student as a developing professional. I was talking to a student this morning who came to see me about her portfolio and saying, really, this is the only thing the person reading the portfolio will know about you as a practitioner. And the evidence in the portfolio is what other people and you yourself say about your practice. And the reflective account is a way of bringing that together so that people get a flavour of the uniqueness of you as a practitioner. And what I'm hoping is that students will develop the confidence to really show who they are in the portfolio, because at moderating panel the feedback we've had is that they really do give a rounded picture of the student, so encourage students to do that. I think if they do that, they can't escape from illustrating their values. If they try to tick the boxes about have I done this, have I done that, have I shown this particular value, then what you get is a kind of surface approach. Whereas if students try to explain why they do things and what their thinking is and what their approach is, what you get are the values permeating the portfolio. There's no such thing as knowledge-free or theory-free practice, and so what students should be doing in everything they write is thinking about why do I think that, where does it come from, and attaching the reference to it that best accounts for how they know something, not sticking in lumps of theory. That's not the point. The other bit about the portfolio is that it should illustrate the self-directed and reflective learning that they're doing. Again, it's not about this is the learning I've done, but this is the whole learning process that I'm in the middle of. And even, or should I say especially for students at the end of the 3rd year, this is not the finish, it's the start of their continuing professional development. And the best portfolios are the ones that show that learning is a continuous process, and that both content and the business of learning is being learnt about. so that they're becoming more skilled in presenting themselves as learners. Most importantly, and this is what I said to the student I was talking to, is don't write the portfolio for us. And I know it's really hard for them to hear that advice because we're the ones that are marking it. But write it for the service users. That's really who this work is for and about. That's what they're developing their skills for. And I explained that we have service users and carers on the moderating panel, so the markers aren't the beginning and end of it, and that really their focus should be on the people they're here to give a service to, not the academic or the practice assessment staff. So they hold that as their focus. They'll do a much better portfolio than if they try and guess what we want and deliver it to us. So giving advice. The more anxious people get, the more they come and say, is it this or is it this? What does that mean? What does so-and-so mean? And I've been writing practice guidelines, module outlines for something over 20 years. And I used to think that if only I could write it properly, it would be perfectly clear and people would do it. And now I know that's rubbish, because actually words are very blunt instruments for what we're trying to communicate here, which is why, incidentally, I absolutely love webcasting. Because you can hear the tone, you can get the message, I hope, about the philosophy, the principle, the quality, not just the words. So when students come and say, what does this mean? Does it mean this or does it mean this? It's really important that you don't make it up. The rules that we are held to are the ones that are written down in the book. And if a student interprets them in a way that we wouldn't, but they're still accurate, we can't punish them for that because of the imperfection of the words themselves as a way of carrying message. The most important thing is that the more detailed information students ask for comes from a place of anxiety and trying to please us, to get it right for us. If you respond to that with confidence, tell them that the portfolio is about you, it's yours. Everybody's portfolio is going to be different. It's got to have the contents in it that we say are in it, but that's like the ingredients in a recipe. Nobody can use the same ingredients in the same recipe and produce an identical dish. It isn't how cooking works. Nor is it how portfolios work. The best portfolios have a flavour of their own, and that flavour is the student. So when you get anxiety about how do I do this, should it be here, should it be there, should it be this, should it be that, check the guidelines and the module outline, see what it says and direct students back to that and say, do it the way you think it'll work best for what you're trying to say. Offer them encouragement. Don't, however tempted, don't interpret it and write out a new set of rules. So we fell into awful trouble in the first year when we did it, and I think that's where the 6-hour rule for a day in the first year came from. It actually, Angie and I looked it up and it isn't written down anywhere, and so it's going to disappear next year, I think. But that's from students saying, how much does this mean? And a lot of the guidelines and a lot of the requirements are written so that students have to interpret them and have room to interpret them. What we don't want is the kind of formulaic, all the right bits of paper are here and therefore it must pass nonsense. This is about presenting people as professionals. So, give you some examples about this. Confidentiality. It's very simple for students to fail. This is written in both the guidelines and in the module outline using exactly the same words. And I can't read it to you because I'm doing this, but it is a service user or carer name, an address, or a photograph, something which clearly identifies the person. Actually, what students need to do is to think really hard about how they protect the privacy of service users and carers in an absolutely consistent way, and say what that is. So their portfolio actually shows that they know this is complex. They know it can't be solved with simple rules. The same thing applies with anti-racist and anti-oppressive standards. When we wrote these, and it came out of a piece of work that Liz Curry did a long time ago with going through the diploma in social work portfolios and seeing what wasn't there. And then we did a lot of work with practice teachers to look at what we needed to have in place. And we thought at that time that we'd done quite a good job of solving the problem. So we produced standards for anti-racist within anti-oppressive practice. Now you know that a group of you are currently reviewing those and seeing how good they are in terms of a learning tool. Because the danger is the minute you give somebody a framework, they start using it as a tick list. And they go, done that, done that, done that, must be all right. Because actually, anti-oppressive, anti-racist work within that is a very complex business and has to be thought about and struggled with. And you don't get it right just by getting it ticked off the list. So when students say, I'm not sure how to incorporate this in my portfolio, you say, how are you doing it? Write about how you're doing it. Don't assume that we know anything about you. Don't assume we know anything about anti-racist or anti-oppressive practice. And write what you're writing as if it was for somebody who reads the Daily Mail, if you like. Because that'll make them spell out the detail of their thinking and what they're doing. So again, encourage people to use this as a tool, not as a tick list. The same thing happens with service user and carer feedback. People invent forms, and forms can be quite good because they allow people to write the feedback, to answer specific questions, and for students to seek feedback via other people, so when they're not there. It's not the only way to get service user and carer feedback, and I certainly hope it's not the only way students are seeking it, because they should be looking for feedback in everything they do. Non-verbal feedback, response feedback, as well as direct and articulated feedback. And they need to be incorporating that into everything that they write. You know, how they know what they're doing is all right or not, what they're doing about that when they think they've got something wrong. They should be reflecting with the people they're working with, not just on the basis of a form that's been filled in. So really the formula for that is not particular. Again, it needs to be there, but it needs to be there in a way that's real and congruent and not just to satisfy us. And finally, holistic assessment is something that we are still working to achieve, and we've, as you know, these service user and carer statements were written because the National Occupational Standards, the Code of Practice, the BASWA Code of Ethics, the Global Standards for Social Work and the benchmark standards didn't kind of fit together neatly into any framework that students could use as a way of proving their practice. And in fact the National Occupational Standards are mostly what programmes use for portfolios for practice. But as you know, if you compare them in the mapping at the back of the portfolio guidelines, that they miss all kinds of things that service users and carers tell us are important. So what we should encourage students to do, I think, is to use the statements as a way of thinking about what they've written about their practice, as a way of kind of checking whether they've included all the things they should have thought about. What they mustn't do is use them as a tick list, There's no point in them cutting and pasting the statements into their portfolio. It's the use, it's a poor use of the wordage that they've got. So they should be writing about their practice in their own language, because that'll say more about it, and using the statements as a way of making sure that they've thought about all the things they should have thought about. So, okay. How the portfolios fit together. In the first year, what we're looking for is students to start getting the skills of portfolio building, putting documents that are succinct, that are signposted, that are referenced, that are validated, verified rather, into their portfolios, and then describing themselves in relation to them, because that's what the reflective account should be. It should be a summary of themselves which relates to the material that's in their portfolio. It's about focusing on their learning. That's what we're interested in them doing. So they should be recognising themselves as beginning social work students and thinking about how far they've got with that. Again, using feedback. They've done this right from the point of the safety to practice. They should be showing in the portfolio how they are getting more familiar with their own learning needs, how they're refining them, and how they're understanding that they should respond to them. And finally, the reflective account. And please, 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 nobody ever call it an essay, which is, I know, what we had for the first 3 years of the programme. But this is it's their first opportunity to use the material they've got in the second part of the portfolio, which shows what they've done, what feedback they've had about it, for them to present their learning in terms of what they think social work is and how far they've got towards it. So, not repetition, not shipping in lumps of writing about social work, but their account referenced from the literature about what they think social work is and how far they've got towards it, remembering that they're at the first year of a 3-year course. So that's the first year. Year 2, students are now in agencies where they're delivering a social work service. So they need to be showing in their practice that they understand what social work is. And some of them will be in multidisciplinary agencies where social work may not be the major professional activity, and need to show that they understand how to practice social work within that agency. And I think that's a really important distinction, that simply doing the agency's work isn't what we're looking for. That in that they need to have a realistic understanding of their own learning needs and how they plan to meet those needs in year 3, because the move from year 2 to year 3 isn't a set of tick boxes, it's not a set of hurdles, it's I know how far I've come and I know what I need to do in order to get to the qualifying point, and how I'm going to do that in a year, because that's how much they'll have. So that's the important thing about year 2 portfolios, is that they're actually taking on, if you like, that self-responsibility for learning and have a plan for how they're going to do it. In year 3, what we're looking for is competent, conscious, self-critical, self-aware practitioners. Sounds simple when I say it like that, doesn't it? But the most important thing that we're looking for is that people have an understanding of the issues of social justice, of how social workers need to operate within the hugely different organisational structures they find themselves, in a way that promotes the rights of service users and people who care for them, and promotes social justice. So that's what we're looking for, and I don't think students can write that if they use a formula, because we have to hear about their own concern. My experience this year in working with students who are doing projects, and their project hand-in is 2 weeks, I think, before portfolio hand-in. And my worry is that they'll have invested a huge amount in putting their project together, and they'll forget how relevant all that is to their portfolio. So this is a really critical point, I think, talking to third year students about: don't assume we've read your project. Don't imagine that the work you've done will be visible in your portfolio unless you put it in your portfolio. Because otherwise, I think what we'll get is students who know an enormous amount about the subject that they're about the service user group that they're working with, but they don't show us in the portfolio. So I'm not talking about cut and paste, but I am talking about making sure the knowledge they have is incorporated in the portfolio. So I think finally, all I want to say is just above all, encourage students to take the confidence of that they'll need as professionals to actually represent their work in a way that within a portfolio really captures who they are, how they think, what they know, and what's important to them in terms of their practice. Because that's what will result in the best quality portfolios. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. Oh, shall I turn that off? I'm going to pick up questions now. I think, okay, pity the students are not watching now. This will be fab. Yeah, that's why I was so disappointed last time that it wasn't recorded, because I thought, oh, you could show it to students as well, because I knew you were having the workshop on the Monday. So I'm very happy for this to be shown to students in whatever way they can access it. So, okay. My confidentiality. They ask about yeah. People ask constantly about what the rules are. It's all written down. If it doesn't say you must this or you mustn't that, they have to use their own judgment. And bless my soul, we are expecting students to come out able to use their judgment. And I think it's just giving them the confidence to be able to do that, because unfortunately, one of the things that they've learned through educational systems is that they have to work out what we want and give it to us. So tell them what we want is written in the guidelines and the module outline, and after that it's up to them. And what we want is for them to produce their own work. That's what we want. So, are there any more questions? That makes it sound so easy and straightforward. I know. What I also know, because I had to do a similar job myself when I applied for the teaching fellowship, that I had to put together a portfolio saying, this is what I've done, this is what I think, this is how it all hangs together. And actually what I got told, with to my absolutely great disappointment, was that what the first one I'd done really didn't have my voice in it, didn't hang together, and so I had to write it about 5 times. So with support and getting other people to read it and going back to the drawing board, thinking again. And actually that portfolios are hard work, and you do have to write over and over again to get to the point where it really does represent what you mean. And it's graft. I know it's graft. And worth doing, because you have something that you can feel proud of as well, because it does bring together your own work in a way that otherwise kind of dissolves when you move on. So, any more questions? Okay. That's it. Appropriate to sample portfolio. Oh, Linda, yeah, okay. What you're asking is if it's appropriate for students to see a sample portfolio if they're supposed to produce their own one. The answer is absolutely yes, I think so. There are no secrets here. We're not... it's like Should there be a picture of the cake in the recipe book? I'm not sure. It actually does the baking for you in your own kitchen and with your own utensils. The portfolios that we have are only for showing, they're not for taking away and photocopying. And my experience with students who've had difficulty with portfolio, where they've had to repeat, is that they've come, and this is a generalisation, but it's several students I can think of who've come and they've said, well, my practice was all right because the placement supervisor and the feedback I got was all right, so it's just my portfolio. And I've looked at other people's portfolios and they're all different, so what do you want? And the answer is, we want yours. If students try to use a formula, it won't work. I mean, actually what you see is students getting stuck in trying to get it right. So they can look at anybody's, I think, because what we'll be able to see is whether it's theirs or not. And the best portfolios are unique. So, Angie, most or all of the questions, this is from Angie, that you've had from students so far are about what do I do with and what do I have to and what do you want. So thanks for some very useful key messages. I'll be passing them on. That's why I love webcasting. It would take me forever to go on like this to everybody I meet. So here it is. Thanks for the feedback about the metaphors, Rose. I'll look forward to cake. That's it. Okay.